we've seen now how the United States of America uses neoclassicism as a way to appeal to the civic and political values of this new country with these classical references in art and architecture. Okay, we're going to now turn our attention back to Europe across the Atlantic Ocean. We're going to look at France. What's going on in France? We went to England with Kaufman and Chiswick House. We went to the United States of America. Let's see what's going on in France. So France at this time is ruled by King Louis the 16th. X is 10, V is 5, plus 1, 16. So Louis the 16th. He is the grandson of Louis the 15th. And Louis's wife is the Queen of France, Marie Antoinette. Marie Antoinette! I know, I can hear you. You're all very excited. I'm going to get into Marie Antoinette in this class, but if I have not fed your interest enough, email me because I have a lot more I can share about her. So now, the ideas of the Enlightenment, ironically, were embraced by the French monarchy. They saw themselves as modern and reasonable and logic, but they did not participate in the same ideas of like government being for the people or educating its citizens. That's problematic because it's maybe putting the power away from our king. So the French monarchy saw the, government and education thing a little bit of a challenge, or, like I said, problematic. Now, during the reign of Louis XVI, the court life does return back to Versailles. I know, I thought we were done with Versailles. No, Louis XV, he loved it, and his grandson, he maintains court at Versailles. Away from the people, away from the struggles, away from the challenges that are faced by his people. What kind of challenges? Well, during this time in France, there were many challenges. One, there was a huge economic depression because the French had heavily funded the United States, or sorry, the American Revolution. What? Yeah, uh, France hates England. And so they heard, what? You don't like England too? Oh, we'll totally help you. They sent all of this money and resources to the revolutionaries in uh, the colonies and helped to, well, basically defeat the British. So there's an economic depression because of their aid in the revolution. Also, there's been a series of years of drought and flooding. Well, here in California, we're very familiar with droughts. Droughts mean no water, not a lot of crops grow, right? Then there was a series of years where there was a lot of water, flooding. Now you might think, a lot of water, that's great. Not great because it washed all the seeds out of the fields. And again, no food. So there is a depression, an economic depression. There's also a drop or depletion in resources like the basic necessities of food, which then not only rise in starvation, but also prices. Because there's so many limited resources, prices are starting to inflate or skyrocket. This is just two of the main issues happening in France at this time. And Louis and Marie, they're not even a part of it. They're very aware of it on the fringes. Instead, they're just living up the same kind of excessive lifestyle established by the Louis XIV and Louis XV. Louis XVI, I mean, he's not even really that great of a guy. He inherits the throne, but he's not a born leader. He's very like wishy-washy. He's very uncertain. He's never definitive in his own answers. He's always looking to others. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And never making a decision. He likes to eat, and he kind of becomes this glutton that people of the court start calling him like fat pig because he's just disgusting. And he likes to, tinker with clocks and stuff, which was great, but where's the voice of a leader? Marie Antoinette. She's from Austria. She's a princess of Austria, and this was a marriage of political alliances between the French and the Austrian Empire. Um, she's married to Louis and brought over when she's 15 years old, and um, she's really unprepared for the rigor and the strictness of French court life. Austrian court life was not as intense and intimately involved with the royals, and so she's uh, overwhelmed by how all of the courtiers are so involved in everything, like loading up your toothbrush kind of stuff. Also, the French, they make fun of her accent, and it's just really difficult for her to find her standing and her voice. So she starts to cope with things like fashion and jewelry and card playing. And at Versailles, she builds a little like a oasis or a little bit of paradise in the hill or in the gardens of Versailles, including this mansion. This is her private mansion in Versailles. It's called Petit Trianon, and it was the queen's palace. So it was just space for her and any of her few invited guests. It was a way to escape from all the prying eyes and the harsh judgments of court life. And she loved to escape to this with her friends. She also loved baths. What? That's crazy, right? I know. She outfits Versailles with some of the very first bathrooms. And she makes indoor plumbing popular, thank goodness. Flushing toilets popular, thank goodness. She loves to take baths. With all of the lushness of milk and water and almonds and lemon peel and roses and marshmallows. So yes, it's excessive, but it's also hygiene. So I appreciate her for that. Now, she also has this kind of Disneyland park in Versailles called the Queen's Hamlet, and it's basically an ideal French village. And it has all of the kind of pleasantries of farm life. There's like a bakery, a dairy, and she can walk around with her and her friends dressed up like French peasants and enjoy the simple life of the French peasantry. Go collect eggs in the chicken coop and go milk the cows in the dairy farm, in the dairy barns. I include this here because I think it's fascinating and interesting, but I also want you to understand that she's using French peasantry as an escape from her life as a royal. She sees it as this idealized or romanticized view when it's not. Her going out into the chicken coop to find eggs, that is not the reality of the French peasantry. So she has this idealized kind of simplicity. Rousseau, the Enlightenment, yes. She's going like, oh, let me go to the simple pleasures of life, like Rousseau said. But it's the skewed version. I like to call it a Disneyland version of reality. Now, the king and queen, they, here's another detail of one of the buildings in the Queen's Hamlet. Now, oh, I also like to show you this here, the interior of the Petit Trianon. It's outfitted in the latest style of neoclassicism. So it doesn't have all of the Rococo exuberance and arabesque and whiplash lines. Instead, it's outfitted with more geometric shapes and patterns. We'll look at another detail of her apartments in Versailles to kind of further this idea of the French and neoclassicism. If this palace looks like you have to live in it, the Petit Trianon, there is a replica in San Francisco, and it most recently was up for sale in 2015. And I don't know how much it actually sold for, but it was listed for $17 million. It's on Washington Street in San Francisco. It was built in 1902, and it's quite fantastic. Look at that. Look at that. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Here are the rooms of Marie Antoinette inside of the Palace of Versailles. So inside the Versailles Palace itself, she had a series of apartments or rooms, and she redecorated them not in the Rococo, but in the Neoclassic. I emphasize this with, well, consideration that she is the Queen of France, and so it's going to be still extremely expensive gold gilding, but it's not the arabesque and soft organic lines of the furniture that we saw in the Rococo, or the encrusticated ceilings of the Rococo. Instead, these are making a direct reference to the ancient Roman palaces. Here is the preserved wall paintings of an ancient Roman palace, of an ancient Roman emperor. And we can see how there's the use of these greenery, these boughs of greenery, and these fantastical creatures. Look at these like mermen, right? These sea serpents. And here, look at here, griffins, and these geometric patterns that line up the sides, right? Maybe those aren't griffins. Those are harpies. Sorry, those are harpies. They're winged, breasted women. So we have these beautiful connections to the neoclassical world. If you want to experience a neoclassical interior of the French neoclassic period, then go to the Salon Doré in the Legion of Honor. The Salon Doré, the Golden Room. The Salon Doré was taken panel by panel, piece by piece from an hôtel in Paris, the Hôtel de Tremouille, and it has gone an extensive reconstruction and restoration. And if you're interested in art and you're interested in science and chemistry, you should look into art restoration. I'm going to send you, or I'm going to include a link below this video in the Canvas module to the Legion of Honor's video of the restoration.